All right, welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited about today's guest because this episode is going to hit close to heart. I live in Michigan. I have on filmmaker William Hart about his documentary called Lead and Copper, which regards the Flint water crisis. Thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I think it's such an important topic, and I'm so glad that you have really provided exposure for this. I mean, it made national news, but these things they tend to get lost after a while, and I'm really glad that your documentary is hitting now.
Thank you very much. Yeah. It's been a long process.
So, can you kind of walk me through your origin story as a filmmaker and what brought you into making this doc?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've always wanted to be a filmmaker ever since I was like 8. You and I are probably pretty big Star Wars fans, and that's what set me off
Yep.
seeing Star Wars and, the re release in theaters and being like, okay, I want to do that. Flash forward I don't know how many years, almost 20. And I was a freelance video journalist for Yahoo News. And they would send me to places like at a drop of the hat, be like, call me up and
Really?
say, hey, are you available this afternoon?
Wow.
Do you want to go to Baltimore? Or hey, do you want to go to Ferguson or something? And they sent me to Flint in the middle of January of 2016, I think. And I came back and I always had the option to pitch more stories, and I did. But I've always felt like because of how the Flint water crisis happened, it was a lot of writing on the wall for how I personally believed how politics were going to start to shift in our country and what was going
Yeah.
to be at risk in communities like Flint. And so, with some of my good friends who are my producers, Alex and Pat, and my sound mixer, who is also our composer, we drove out to Michigan and we started the documentary and probably did like a dozen or I don't know, 10 or 12 trips out there, as well as a few other trips. And over 8 years of editing and re-editing, and here we are. I never intended it to take this long, but it was important to include the scope of how Flint is not alone, but also tell the story as accurately as possible and historically as possible. So, patience was a virtue while making this.
Wow. Did COVID affect this at all? Because obviously you had to go through the COVID crisis.
Yes. Uh, COVID affected it in a few ways. I mean, I do behind the scenes, and I work on other documentaries, and I sometimes camera operate on movies, and so my job was gone, and we were self-funding, most of this
Wow.
film, and so my job was completely gone. So there was no way for us to pay for any more shoots, and then at the same
Okay.
time, the water crisis that's happening in Newark that has some parallels to Flint started
Yeah.
kicking off in the middle of COVID. And we wanted to do more interviews with the city administration in Newark. So at some point it became of like, well, we just have to do it. We just have to go there with a camera, and I'll set up the sound and mics and everything. Well, hopefully we get a good interview, and I feel like we got a few good ones. There also are parallels within COVID and what happened in Flint. There's a lot of people who ignored how big of a public health crisis coronavirus was, the same way that they did in Michigan and in other water crises, which usually affects the people who are going to be hurt the most.
These decisions, I mean, that's what you're kind of leading me into what I was going to ask you without, obviously, I want people to watch this documentary, but what were some of the revelations? I mean, the big one that I took from it is that they were cutting out budget just to save money and really didn't care based demographically on the population of Flint. Is that kind of what you were ascertaining, or were you kind of digging even deeper and finding even more stuff?
We could have made a hey, and if someone wants to pay me, I'll make a part two. But we could have made a very in the weeds sort of like Michigan politics, state politics, and federal politics
Right.
film. At one point, we were trying to get something revelatory that would have been, there's some things that we found out that I think are just absolutely insane.
Yeah.
But like the biggest thing that enraged me, and what I always say is that my anger is the biggest motivator for any project I work on. So any injustice that I see, whether it be personal or social or whatever, that's going to drive me to want to complete a project. And the biggest thing that upset me was the fact that there is this Public Act 436 allowing the state governor to come in and
Yeah.
appoint an emergency, quote unquote, emergency manager,
Quote. Yeah.
emergency financial manager that removes the job of every elected official in the city. And like that just seems, that's insane, you know? Like
Yeah.
that seems like very unconstitutional. I mean, it is unconstitutional, it's anti-democratic. And for you to do it in a city like Flint that has a huge political history and a huge civil rights history, it's insane. Like he couldn't write it. It really is like an extra form of evil, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the crisis, it went all the way to the top in the Michigan, state governor on all the way down where there were allegations there, and so then you start saying, okay, are they appointing this because they don't want to get in trouble and this guy shutting everything down? It starts to feel very kind of authoritarian.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, like
what the
scary
hell's going on?
authoritarian. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm supposed to read about this or watch it on TV, not watch my neighbors not be able to drink their house water.
Yeah.
And we were all, shipping water over, dropping water off, crates of it for them. And it's just, it's insane. And then you're worried about your own city. Like, okay, is my water safe? So walk me through. It looks like it's doing well in festivals.
Yeah, we did a whole festival run like last year, and we were really happy to be invited to the festivals that we were invited to. Montclair was great. Windsor was fantastic. Beloit. We wanted to start it. And the goal was always to screen it first in Michigan, and
Yeah.
I was so happy that Detroit Free Press Film Festival accepted our submission because they were also just a invaluable source of information. The amount of like bookmarks I have of
Yeah.
Detroit Free Press articles about the Flint water crisis above in my browser right now
Of
is
course.
it's just like all across. So I was super excited to screen it first in Michigan, and we hope to have more screenings there as as soon as we can.
Yeah, I mean that's awesome. Let me know so I
Yeah,
can
we will.
attend. I would
Yeah,
love to. I'd love to attend being a local.
yeah,
So over the course, what has it been, like 8 years?
yeah. It'll be 9 in January.
Starting with what was essentially a cover up, and then leaks, and people disappearing. I don't know if you covered any of that. People have disappeared from this crisis,
Yeah.
which is so surprising.
Well, I don't want to talk too much about that because I did a little bit of digging and I found,
Yeah,
like I pay for White Pages Premium, I do my research, like I can
yeah,
find you pretty quickly. I'm,
yeah,
my open source research is really honed in now after
yeah.
making this doc.
You're on the dark web. I
No,
gotcha.
not in the dark. No, not in the dark web at all. Just I think people would be surprised as to how easy it is to find somebody's phone number.
Oh, that's funny.
But one story that I'll tell is that we heard about this break-in at City Hall
Yeah.
at Flint, and supposedly the break-in happened by someone entering the City Hall parking garage, employee parking garage,
Okay.
and then actually breaking a window out of the water department, the public works office, and then this is like right when the state was like, oh, you got to find all these water lines, you got to find all these
Yeah.
water
It's
lines.
cloak and daggery.
Yeah, so a TV goes missing, and then all the documents about apparently where the lead pipes were gone. And that this is a
That's
quote.
ridiculous.
I've heard this corroborated from a few people, and we wanted to include it in the doc, but one of our sources did just stop talking to us.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
And I really thought that was like sort of going to be like when that was happening while we were shooting this. I really thought that was going to be like not so cinematic. That like
yeah,
one of the people that I'm trying to interview that has this like huge bombshell allegation just like no
gone.
longer responds to phone calls, can't find her at her house, all this stuff.
Yeah. And it's scary because, I mean, some people have gone missing and they're like, are they did someone make them go away, or are they bullied into silence? It is very, stuff that you don't think is going to happen
Yeah.
down the street,
Yeah.
and here you are, you're watching people go through it in your neighborhood. So it's pretty wild. So with this coming out, have you seen a renewed interest in not just Flint, obviously, but like you said, this is hitting other cities as well?
So I think that we unfortunately made a documentary that's only going to increase in relevance over the next 4 to 8 years, right?
Wow.
Um, Under the Biden administration, we're supposed to remove most lead service lines sometime in 2030, which that's phenomenal. That's great. It's
Still a
really,
little while away, yeah.
but it's a while away. It's at least a generation of people who are still a generation of children who are still going to be exposed to lead in their water if they don't know it.
Yeah.
And who knows if that gets rolled back, right? So
Yeah,
I
that's
think
really
that
true.
there's going to be a rolling interest in looking at Flint and the Flint water crisis and the Newark water crisis and what happened in Washington, D.C. as an example as to what could come next with a lot of deregulation and a lot of attacks on local and state democracy.
Yeah, I think that sounds absolutely right, because you're seeing with the new administration, you're seeing a lot of deregulation, throw it back to the states, don't worry about, the federal government coming in and trying to make everything the same and safe. And we are the example.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I mean, what I'm mostly worried about, I think, in the next decade or so is that there isn't a push to prevent the loopholes from being closed because
yeah.
there are federal loopholes and there are also state loopholes. And Michigan now has a great, clean water, some of the strongest regulations in the country, but there are other places that don't. And it's really easy to say, oh, well, this community doesn't deserve it, or they've had problems in the past. So maybe this isn't something we should look into that much. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what's going to continue to happen, unfortunately. And so we made the documentary not only as a demand for justice, but also as a playbook for people to be able to be like, well, I think something's wrong with my water. What should I do? What should I look into? How do
I like
I
that.
figure out how to stick it to the state or stick it to the city and make sure that my family and my friends and my neighbors are happy and healthy and drinking clean water?
So with your research, I mean, did you see a difference between our previous governor Snyder, who was involved in this, and then Gretchen Whitmer, Big Gretch?
Yeah, I mean, I like Whitmer. I'm hoping that they're able to reopen the cases against Snyder and everyone else.
Yeah.
I think that
Hence people disappearing.
hence people despairing. Yeah. Um, I do think that there's always going to be someone, and there's always going to be people who are like, someone could have done it better. I think Whitmer's doing a decent job. I think the city of Flint is doing a decent job. But I don't want to speak out of turn because I'm not from Michigan, right? So like,
Right. I'm just curious because you've been doing the research, but no,
yeah,
I get it. My thing is, we are, as a civilization, we are reactive. We are not proactive. That's the problem. And from my opinion, we haven't been proactive since really building the freeway system. I mean, when we were building the freeway system, we were being innovative. We were, trying to compete with the rest of the world. And then we kind of rested on our laurels, and we are not proactive. We are like, when something happens, we react to it. Oh, there's lead in the water. Now everybody realizes it.
right,
Then they try and hide it.
yeah, yeah.
And then when they're finally exposed, oh, okay, let's try and get lead pipes out of the community. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I wish we were better as a society, but that's just where we are.
I think that another way for people to look at it, especially on the political spectrum, is there's a book called Economic Analysis on EPA that I read. And it's something like for every dollar you spend protecting a water system, you save taxpayers like $50 each.
Wow.
And it's all because of public health. right?
Yeah, sure.
So if we start thinking about like, well, let's be a little bit more preventative. Like let's like look and we don't rush a lot of our public health decisions,
Yeah.
and we really look at the research and how it's going to impact communities, then we will have a better understanding as to how it's more fiscally important and also how it's more important for the health of the community, right?
Boy, I would love to live in that society.
Yeah, well, you know,
It
that's why we
sounds
make documentaries to kind of like prove.
sounds like utopia.
Yeah, right. I'm realistically pessimistic or realistically
Yeah,
optimistic, but
yeah,
um, sometimes it just takes a little beating over the head that like, actually, this is going to save you money, man. You know,
yeah. I
you
love
think you're
that.
such a great businessman. Why don't you look at how much money this is going to save?
It's always short term though. What can I save
Yeah,
now? What can I spend now?
yeah,
They're never really looking to the future. In generations, it's been that way, and I hope one day it would change. That I think about the fact that Google has fiber optic cables that we could be running through the entire country, so that you can download a gig in a second. Could you imagine how
yeah,
connected the world would be even then?
yeah,
But nobody wants to front the money, so we're stuck doing cable.
yeah.
We're stuck with 60-year-old technology.
That's right.
So, and I just look at it like that. So, with having done this, having spent 8 years on this project, having self-funded and really stuck it out, what do you recommend to any filmmaker out there who is trying to decide if they want to do this?
Um, First, if you want to do a documentary, pick something like you can walk to. Michigan was far away,
It's funny.
so pick something that you can get to easily.
Okay.
If you can't, you can 100% still do it. It's just going to cost more. You're never going to have enough money. You're never ever going to have enough money. You're never going to
Okay.
have enough time, and you should. I think every aspiring filmmaker needs to align themselves with friends who are other aspiring filmmakers and try and get a shared belief in the project. Because
Yeah.
then if everyone believes in the project, then it doesn't really matter when it gets done. You're always going to have that support system. I was lucky enough to have that support system with my producers and friends and composers and camera operators and everybody. You know, everyone that I asked to work on this wanted to work on it. And I would
That's
say,
cool.
hey, I can pay you when I can pay you. I'll pay you when I get paid from this next thing, and I'll throw you some bones, or I'll put you on my next thing.
Yeah.
But the other thing too is like, if you're like, oh, I really want to start, just start shooting, and the first stuff you shoot probably won't make it in. The very first stuff
Yeah.
you shoot probably won't make it in. The very first stuff that we shot barely made it in. Not
Really.
Yeah, like the interview with Leon at the end, that was one of our first days.
Okay.
But everything else from that first day, I don't think is in.
Is it because you're trying to weave in a narrative and you're trying to like
You
discover the
find Yeah,
narrative?
you find a lot
Okay.
more through with a doc. I think you find a lot more through editing. Like you can write it
Okay.
out, and we did
Yeah.
do a lot of paper planning, but you find a lot more with like, well, this hits better, right? You know, like this scene
That
hits
makes
better
sense.
after we've done this. And so I think like and I've told this to people who have started documentaries. It's like just shoot like one day and edit that, and then you're going to be like, ah, okay, like this
Oh, I
worked,
like
this worked.
that.
Add another day to that, and if you do it that way,
That's
then
smart.
it's more piecemeal. And when we were in the middle of COVID, we already had a cut, but it wasn't working. It wasn't ready. So we just re-edited it. I re-edited what my original editor Brian Simpson was doing, and I was like, okay, how do I include Newark into this? How do I expand this to include like
I
an
like that.
overarching federal or countrywide issue? And so then we had placeholders. And from there, we were like, okay, we need this archival, or we need an interview with this sort of person. We need to interview this person. So in the middle of COVID, when I had nothing to do, I had a completely new edit, and I was like, okay, I need 3 more interviews. I need this B-roll. I need this archival, and then the movie is done.
Yeah.
Took like an extra year, but it happened.
I mean, I think it's great.
Mhm.
What a insightful nugget there of shoot a day because your concept is the water crisis, right? And then you're gonna go in, and then after you shoot the day, I'm assuming you start to put themes together, and you start going, okay, here's the heart, here's where I can lean in. I actually really love that as like a hack for documentaries. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to work for every single thing, but I think it. And I do a lot of I work on lot of like big budget movies, and I'm the editor is sometimes on set, or at least the producer. I'm watching
That's
the
cool.
producer. I was on Mean Girls musical, and I'm watching the producer like make the cut at Video Village.
That's
Jeff's
cool.
going like this, and then that, and then this, and then that, and then this, and I'm like, "Duh, it's the same thing. It's
That's
the same
awesome.
thing to have a clear vision as to what the edit's going to be, but that only comes after you've kind of like gathered enough berries and everything else that's going to be the glue that might keep it together.
Well, tell me about distribution. Have you guys got distribution yet? Can
We
people
do,
watch this
yeah.
thing?
Yeah,
Okay.
so November 19th, it's out on most digital platforms and on demand.
Awesome.
You can pre-order it today, which is the 17th, on Apple TV. And we hope to eventually get it onto a streamer. But our goal really is put this in front of as many eyeballs as possible, because it's an important story and people need to learn about it and learn how it could happen in their community.
Well, as somebody from Michigan, thank you for your passion. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you for your honesty. William Hart, it's Lead and Copper. Find this film and watch it. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.